The Sicilian Defence has always been spoken of as one of the greatest battlefields in the history of chess. Of course, because the Sicilian has been studied so deeply and played so widely, players on both sides have looked for traps, tricks, and tactical shortcuts to punish the careless. In fact, databases today are filled with thousands of games where even strong opponents walked straight into disasters that looked innocent at first glance. Here we discover the traps that make the Sicilian Defence not only powerful, but deadly. And just before that, please turn on notifications, like, and subscribe to our channel to get started. For more than a century, players at every level have turned to it as the sharpest answer to White's most popular first move, the king's pawn advance. The opening begins with that quiet, confident step of the white pawn to e4. But instead of answering symmetrically with e5, black pushes the c-pawn to c5. And with that, the game immediately veers into uncharted waters. The center is no longer mirrored, it is contested. Black refuses to let white dominate freely. That simple decision on move 1 is what makes the Sicilian so attractive. And it is why grandmasters like Garry Kasparov built entire world championship careers on it. And why Magnus Carlsen still trusts it to this day. The Sicilian has earned its place in chess history because it scores better than almost any other reply to e4. When white plays e4, they usually want to expand with d4 soon after, taking the whole center. But the pawn on c5 interrupts that dream immediately, fighting for the d4 square and saying, "Not so fast." Black may appear to be giving up symmetry, but in return they gain a dynamic imbalance. And that imbalance is what gives life to the Sicilian. For black, it isn't about equalizing passively. It is about seizing chances, striking back, and playing for the win. One of the most famous disasters begins with the Kahn variation. It looks so simple. White pushes the king's pawn to e4. Black responds with c5. The knights come out to f3, and after e6, white builds the classical d4 thrust. Soon both knights are hopping into the center. Black plays the quiet pawn to a6, the Kahn's trademark move. Nothing seems threatening at this point. But white, eager to develop quickly, might bring the bishop to f4, thinking it's a useful square, eyeing c7, preparing to castle. Yet this move, seemingly harmless, is already the start of their downfall. Black immediately strikes with e5, and suddenly the entire white position collapses. Both the bishop and the knight on d4 are under attack at once. White's only logical move appears to be capturing the pawn with the bishop, but that walks straight into the devastating queen check from a5. And with that single move, the bishop is gone, the position is in ruins, and the trap snaps shut. More than 7,000 players in the Lichess database alone have fallen for this simple trick, and the reason is clear. It doesn't look like a trap at all. Unlike elaborate sequences where both players memorize 15 moves of theory, this one springs from natural-looking choices. White thinks they're developing, black plays a normal pawn thrust, and in 2 moves the game is practically over. But the traps of the Sicilian are not a one-way street. Black may set the snares, but white too has ambushes waiting, and one of the most spectacular comes from the razor-sharp Sveshnikov variation. This line is beloved by aggressive players because it throws the game into immediate complexity. It begins with the same first steps: e4, c5, the knights come out, d4 is played, the center is exchanged. Soon black thrusts a 5 forward, kicking the knight from d4, and white hops into b5, a forward outpost. To keep the intruder from jumping into d6, black shores up the pawn chain with d6. White pins the knight with the bishop on g5, provoking another pawn thrust, the a6 move. White retreats to a3. Black pushes b5. The battlefield is set. Now white strikes. They exchange on f6 and black faces a choice: capture with a pawn or capture with the queen. Many players, afraid of doubled pawns, take with the queen, and that is where white's hidden Thunderbolt lies. The knight leaps to d5 with tempo, hitting the queen and threatening a devastating fork on c7. Black retreats. But white is not finished. The bishop dives onto b5 with a sacrifice that cannot be ignored. Black captures, thinking they're winning material, but then white's knight jumps to b5. And in that moment, the entire black queenside collapses. The rook will fall no matter what, and even desperate queen checks cannot save the position. There is also a trap from a calmer variation, the Rossolimo. After e4 and c5, instead of rushing into d4, white brings the bishop to b5. Black challenges with a 6, White often retreats to a4 trying to keep the bishop pair, but that retreat walks straight into a cage. Black pushes b5, the bishop steps to b3, and then c4, trapping the bishop completely. More than 50,000 times online, players have fallen for this net. When we step back and look at these three traps together, the Sicilian emerges not just as an opening of grand theory, but as a jungle of hidden dangers. Each trap tells a story of human instinct clashing with cold reality. For beginners, these traps are warnings, but also opportunities. They teach you that not every natural-looking move is safe, and they give practical weapons you can use immediately in your own games. And beyond all the tactics, these traps reveal something deeper. The Sicilian is not about balance, it is about imbalance. It invites risk, and with risk comes reward, or catastrophe. So the next time you see the pawn slide to c5, remember, you are not just entering an opening. You are stepping into a battlefield littered with the remains of countless players who thought they were safe. The Sicilian will always demand respect, because behind its theory and history, it is still full of secrets waiting to claim the careless.